Hello, travelers. Welcome to the Copperfoxinn. My name is Thomas the Human Bard, and I am joined today by...
Mercy the Tiefling Wizard.
And Onog the half-orc barbarian.
And we are off on a side quest. It's been a while, folks.
It has
since we've been on a side quest together.
Yeah.
We were doing them like that was the bread and butter for a hot
for a second there, yeah.
For a chunk there.
We've missed a couple of Unearthed Arcanas, but we've actually had some requests to go back and cover those, so we'll get to them eventually, we promise. But today, we're covering the most recent Unearthed Arcana, Unearthed Arcana 2020, Subclasses, Part 5. And in this episode, we'll be discussing the Monk, Way of the Ascendant Dragon.
Very cool.
Here there be Dargans.
Yeah. Both of the subclasses in this document are kind of dragon-y, dragon-esque, dragon-like themed. And the Ranger, the Drakewarden, we'll be covering on our next side quest. So we'll have a link to that and a card to that. But today, we're covering the Monk. So the last monk that we reviewed, I believe, was the Way of Mercy monk, which we had some different opinions on. I remember we all liked it, I think. Some of us felt like there was some odd theming going on and some strange flavor.
Brawl.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the masks one?
Yeah, that was the mask. That was the wear a mask and be like...
It was
like
kind of a weird
plague
one.
Traveling
the plague
doctor
that if there are two of them, it breaks the game.
Yeah.
The poisoner, but plague doctor, but is it even? Yeah.
So we'll see how we all side on this one. Let's get into the subclass here. So the Way of the Ascendant Dragon is a monk subclass that emulates the power of dragons. Monks who follow the Way of the Ascendant Dragon revere the power and grandeur of dragons.
Who doesn't?
Okay.
Am I right?
They alter their own ki to resonate with draconic might, channeling it to augment their prowess in battle, soar through the air, and to bolster their allies. As a follower of this monastic tradition, you decide how you unlocked the power of dragons through your ki. The Ascendant Dragon Origin Table offers some possibilities. They give us a D6 table for different possible sort of backstories that can lead up to this happening. They've done this with a couple of recent Unearthed Arcanas, specifically that one that was like, a werewolf was your dad. But this one makes a lot more sense because most of them are just like, you like dragons, or you knew a dragon, or you've heard of dragons.
You studied dragons.
You found a scroll that was about dragons. I think that this is obviously then what Poe from Kung Fu Panda would have to use, because he gets the dragon scroll. And instead of no secret ingredients on it, it's just the Way of the Ascendant Dragon Unearthed Arcana.
Someone make a good panda player race and send it our way.
Pandaren,
we should
World
look
of
that up.
Warcraft,
That would actually be really
I bet
fun.
that someone's made one, at least somewhere. Draconic Disciple, the third level Way of the Ascendant Dragon feature. You can channel your Draconic ki to imbue your unarmed strikes with the essence of a dragon's breath, and to use your connection with draconic creatures to magnify your presence. You gain the following benefits. When you damage a target with an unarmed strike, you can change the damage type to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. If you can't already, you learn to speak, read, and write Draconic.
Okay.
And if you fail a Charisma Intimidation or Charisma Persuasion check, you can use your reaction to reroll the check as you tap into the mighty presence of dragons. Once this feature turns a failure into a success, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest.
Okay, so you can keep trying, and if it keeps failing, you can keep using it. But
Right.
if it works, then okay, cool.
It gets
you don't
to
waste
work
your one try.
once. It's weird that it doesn't then just say you succeed on the roll instead. Because if it's like you didn't, it's just like if it doesn't get used unless you succeed, then why not just have it say you succeed?
You succeed.
I don't know. I mean, maybe for like some flavor reasons. I also think it's really weird
That
to
is
say
interesting.
turns a failure into a success, because then the DM has to have very hard and fast failure and success DC set.
That's true.
Which sometimes, like, some are obvious and provided, right? And that is very normal to have. But some things are on, like, a gradual success scale, where they're like, if they roll a 10, some of it works. If they're on a 15, most of it works.
Well, I feel like a lot of the time a DM doesn't have a set number in their head for things like ability checks, and then they hear what you rolled and they go, oh, pretty good, or they go, and then they narrate it from there, you know?
There's generally like
Hey, why would you call me out like this?
There's generally a number, at least, like, in mind for the blocks of, like, is it an average task, a hard task, a difficult, or an impossible task?
But especially, like, there are certain things, like, in the Dungeon Master Guide, there are things where it's like, if you set something to 10, it's an average. If you set something to 15, it's moderate. 20, it's hard. 25, it's very hard. And 30, it's almost impossible, is how it's worded.
Right.
But still, in a social setting, those hard lines don't always work because there are scenarios where you've rolled a 14, but I was looking for a 15. But then I'm like, okay, you do convince them, but they add another caveat onto what you want them to do. So like does that count as a success?
And even for more physical things, you're often like, oh, well, it kind of almost works when which like that just doesn't work for this.
Yeah. This requires you to know successes and failures very hard and fast. And some people play that way, and I know that some people play with like open DC or like the DM will say, you need a 15 to succeed on this. And then like they know exactly what number they're shooting for, right? But that's not always the case. That's not how everyone plays. So I think that's interesting to reference that in this. I like the idea of a feature that you get to keep using until it works. Like, in general, that's not a bad design. I do like that
flavor side of things.
Yeah.
I think something that I've been thinking about and seeing people discuss recently about D&D that is relevant here, if you, as a DM, want to communicate with your players the difficulty of something before they roll for it, but you don't want to kind of, if it feels like it breaks the immersion to you a little bit, to just say, it'll have to be a 15.
Sure.
Just use the coded language from the DMG and say, it would be almost impossible, or it will be moderately hard. Because then your player knows, okay, so I have to roll like a 15, but you didn't have to just say a number if you don't like that. So I think that's a really useful tool. I also really like in this ability that you can choose what kind of damage it is, instead of it just being, like, you have to pick one and it's always that one.
This is very interesting. We haven't seen what the other third level ability does yet, but just the ability to change damage type this early in the game is very useful.
And there's not really a limit on it right now. It's just like any time you damage, you can choose what. And
anytime you punch a boy, it can be lightning.
Yeah.
Which is very, very powerful especially when fighting either undead or like lycanthrope characters, because there's basically a hard line in most classes, and that line is 6th level, because 6th level is when everything starts getting inherent magic in their attacks. Like the monk their unarmed strikes are magical, so that they can overcome people that are resistant to non-magical bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. The Circle of the Moon Druid gets that as well for their beast form. And so the ability for this pseudo-martial class to be able to overcome those resistances and go, oh, it's immune to non-magical bludgeoning damage, well, I'm just going to deal acid damage when I punch it instead.
Yeah.
Is very interesting, because it kind of tips the scales a little bit, because a lot of challenge rating for monsters like that with those common or those resistances and or immunities to common weapon types, the challenge rating of them is based upon that. So if you have something that can immediately subvert that, then a werewolf, like this thing is already a werewolf hunter, and we haven't even seen any other abilities.
Yeah, for sure. I also it's limited slightly in that, like, there's no psychic damage, there's no force damage. These are the dragon damage types, right? They're the
elemental.
Yeah, there's no radiant or necrotic. They're the elementals,
basically, yeah.
But I love the idea that, instead of just saying pick one, that's the dragon you're aligned to, this is like, you are touching into all of Draconic heritage.
Subscribe to them all, yeah.
And I like the idea that, since it's a monk specifically, you could have like different poses or stances to be like, fire attack, go! like it could just be anime.
You do, you attack them green dragon style. As opposed to saying, my grandpa was a green dragon.
My knuckles are poison.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to say something that always kind of bugs me, but I also understand why they don't do it. And it's, if you can't already, you learn to speak, read, and write Draconic. And that is one of those things where it can kind of cause a feels bad moment, because there is the game is kind of saying there is a correct way to have built this character, and it was you don't already know Draconic.
Yeah.
Because if you had the option to take an exotic language and you chose Draconic, then this ability doesn't
Has
help
one
you
less
at all.
ability to it. Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing because I always appreciate the ones where it's like you learn Mage Hand, the Mage Hand cantrip, and if you already knew the Mage Hand cantrip, then you learn a different cantrip. You know,
Because that at least provides you something still.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, because we need you to know Mage Hand for the way this class works, but if you were thinking ahead and took Mage Hand already, we're going to continue to reward you. But then there's the occasional one where it's like, if you don't know the Light cantrip, if you already know the Light cantrip, then too bad you don't get anything from this ability.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so I don't understand why it would make sense because you have studied Draconic, but you already knew Draconic that you now know how to speak Halfling. That doesn't really work flavor-wise. But it is one of those things where it's like, well, for me to get it's all about opportunity cost in this regard. So for me to get the most bang out of my buck with this ability, my hopeful Ascendant Dragon monk will not know Draconic for the first 2 levels of their life, and then suddenly learns Draconic.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like my roleplay tip in that regard for mechanics that work like that, if this is helpful to anyone, something that I'm trying to get better about is looking ahead at what abilities am I going to gain, am I planning on gaining as I level up, and then role-playing when, because I feel like all the time the DM goes, okay, do you want to do anything in your downtime? And I go,
Nothing.
no. Is role-playing studying things that you are going to eventually know how to do.
Yes.
So if for a couple of levels, whenever you have downtime, you're studying Draconic, then... But you still just aren't fluent in it yet, then it does
Right.
kind of make sense that now you finally like fluently understand the language and you've figured out all of these texts that you've been trying to study, so you gain the abilities at the same time. Feels like it makes more sense.
And I think there's a great way to flavor with, especially with languages specifically. You can work with your DM and be like, I want it to be, I'm working on learning Draconic, so I've got like hello, goodbye, and where's the bathroom, but I don't know anything else
My
yet.
accent is terrible.
But my
and
accent
can't
is bad.
understand me.
But by third level, I now know. I'm pretty fluent in it. Yeah.
And you can do that with like other abilities too, where it's like your wizard can be, or your warlock or whoever can be experimenting with a spell, and finally they go, guys, I figured out how to do this now, when they've learned it.
Yeah.
Because talking about like feels bad moments, I think sometimes when you level up and you're like, I guess I woke up and know how to do this now.
Or sometimes like in the middle of the day, because it's like, well, you leveled up right here, right now, and you're like, I guess now I can wield great axes. Like, oh, interesting.
But if you've been practicing.
Yeah, but if you flavored it as like your growth and practice, then it makes more sense.
Well, and that's kind of how I treated my wizard character, the Blade Singer, Fen, is that he's basically trying to reverse engineer every spell he learns.
Love that.
As he levels up, and like one of my favorite parts of the campaign is he's been trying to figure out how to crack Misty Step, and then casually during like a downtime moment he accidentally casts it and goes, wait a minute,
Everybody,
Write down what I did.
Nobody move. Do it again.
nobody move, I need to figure out what
I
happened.
love that.
All right, the next feature, the Breath of the Dragon. Third level feature. You can channel your ki into destructive waves of energy, like the dragons you emulate. They are destructive waves of energy.
You know, like dragons.
When you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace one of the attacks with an exhalation of draconic energy in either a 20-foot cone or a 30-foot line that is 5 feet wide, your choice. Choose a damage type: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. Each creature in the area must make a dexterity saving throw against your ki save DC, taking damage of the chosen type equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die on a failure, or half as much damage on a success. At 11th level, the damage of your breath increases to 3 rolls of your martial arts die. You can use this feature a number of times, equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. While you have no uses available, you can spend 1 key point to use the feature again.
This is so flexible.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. If you run out of them, you can just keep burning key points to keep doing it if you need to. Like, that's fine. But this is quite obviously just the Dragonborn breath weapon
But more
But
flexible.
better,
Much
yeah.
more flexible.
But also you get all of them
Yeah.
at any given moment, whichever one's the best one.
It's interesting, yeah, because this monk doesn't get like a hard and fast like just damage increase, kind like a few of other ones do in certain situations, like the Way of the Open Palm. He just gets more incentive to use the extra attacks, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But this one gets just kind of area of effect stuff. So instead of just attacking one person, you can attack like 3 or even 4 people at once with this ability.
Yeah.
I like this. And once again, yeah, it has the flexibility of whatever damage type you want. I do find it interesting that it's another one of these Unearthed Arcana things where it's like, we're basing this off of your proficiency bonus, which locks you in, and not off of like your wisdom bonus or something like that, which other abilities do, which is something that you can gauge and level up like faster if you wanted to focus on that.
But then the other side of that coin is now you don't have to dump like everything into wisdom if you don't want to. You're free
but you're
to
a
build
monk.
around
You should
it.
be doing that anyway.
No, sure. But I'm just saying, like, a lot of times it's like those can then say, well, if my breath weapon gets more powerful based on my wisdom modifier, that's why would I put points into anything else at this point? But this allows for a lot of freedom to put your stats where you feel like makes sense, like where your character's going to need them. Which might be wisdom, but it could be something else. I'm just now realizing that this is very this subclass is very fairy tale. Natsu.
Yeah, and all the other
All
dragon sorcerers.
Dragon
yeah.
breakers, what are they called?
Well, like the concept of like a martial artist and like advancing to the Ascendant Dragon kind of a thing. It's always been a thing.
In Fairy Tale, he was trained by a
anime.
dragon and like breathes fire and stuff. He like has dragon powers. Yeah.
Likes to punch.
I did want to talk about the counterpoint to what you were talking about, though, Thomas, is that, like, well, if you have no incentives to invest in one of the primary stats of your class, then people actually will, like, try and work around that. Because one of the best examples, I think, of that is the Eldritch Knight.
Sure.
And where nothing scales off of their intelligence. So what they do instead is they take a bunch of spells that don't care about your intelligence modifier. So they like supposedly the best Eldritch Knight is something that has like magic missile and then a bunch of spells that just adjust your stats and don't have anything to do with making anyone make any saves or do damage attack rolls. So you can have an 8 intelligence Eldritch Knight, and he's just as effective as a 16 intelligence Eldritch Knight.
That's a really good point.
And so, on the other side of the spectrum, because not to bring up Rangers again, but Rangers have very few incentives to actually invest in wisdom, with the exception of the ones that have abilities that say, and then you can do this equal to the number of to your wisdom modifier times a day. And so when you start taking those things out, you actually start weirdly incentivizing anti-intuitive builds that may or may not be where you want that build to actually like sit in the meta, kind of a thing.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, the 6th level feature, Wings Unfurled. When you use your Step of the Wind, which is a monk ability that says when you spend 1 key point you can spend 1 key point to take the disengage or dash action as a bonus action, and your jump distance is doubled for the turn. So whenever you do that, you spend that key point, you're going to be disengaging or dashing and jumping. You can unfurl spectral draconic wings from your back that vanish at the end of your next turn. While the wings exist, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. While you have no uses available, you can spend 1 additional key point when you activate Step of the Wind to use this feature again.
Okay.
So yet again, they're falling into that same, which I'm very interested in seeing the sort of response from the community to this, of if you're out of them, you can burn some extra key points to not be out of them. That's up to you.
Well, I think this is in response to various things of people saying like, well, everything uses my key points, so I run out of key points. And what this might actually be upon seeing it in 2 abilities in a row is that this is an ability we wanted to use your key points, but we understand you don't have a lot of key points at this point, so we also gave you some free uses of this ability, is really what those first 2 are. It's not you have 2 uses of this ability that come back on a long rest. It's this ability uses key points and you have 2 free uses.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a fair way to think about it, yeah. Which is I feel like is really nice as a way to put less stress on your key points in general, so you can keep using them for your typical monk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very interesting way of designing it from that direction, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Other than that, gaining a flying speed is it's cool and useful.
Mm-hmm. But it also does sort of... It sort of erases some of the usefulness of Step of the Wind, because, like you said, it does double your, jump distance. And this basically says, you don't have a jump distance because
now.
you can fly. It doesn't matter.
They fly now.
I honestly kind of wish this
let's not and say we did.
No. I honestly kind of wish this one didn't have a flying speed, because to me it actually isn't that on flavor. I feel like saying, I've studied dragons and how they use their ki, and so I can fight with draconic energy, doesn't necessarily mean I grow wings. That feels more that should be a dragon sorcerer, not a dragon monk.
Well, that is a dragon sorcerer.
Exactly, and I think it fits much more there than it does here.
What if it was more instead of doubling your jump distance quadruples, and you are immune.
Gently alight down on the ground.
That feels more like a martial artist studying dragons and the way that they fly through the air, as opposed to someone who just magically grows wings.
I feel like it should be more I'm thinking of, random cut, but the way that warlocks jump in the game Destiny, where it's you sort of do a long floaty jump.
Oh yeah, just like a classic, kung fu movie, kind of walking on
wires,
on spear tops or whatever. Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense,
but
and that would
growing dragon wings.
Yeah, it still would feel draconic, like you're sort of flying, but it wouldn't be so literal as to be I get big dragon wings.
It honestly would feel more it would feel more draconic in an Asian way, which is clearly what this is trying to flavor it with a lot of the language and stuff that they're using.
Sure.
Where it's Chinese dragons aren't big
they
lizards
don't have wings.
with huge wings.
Japanese or Chinese dragons neither have wings, really.
Yeah, and I feel sort of gently floating through the air with your jumps would feel more draconic in that version of dragons.
Yeah. I think so. I think, I wish that was a bit different than what it is. I don't mind the idea that you can move around the battlefield really freely and kind of in the air, but it's the method they've gone about doing that for you that I'm
Yeah, it's the flavor of it just kind of sits wrong with us. The actual ability itself is fine.
And you could flavor flying as gentle wire walking or whatever, but it says you just get big wings and you fly, what?
I would just scratch that out in my copy.
Yeah. I would say that I have wing tattoos or something like that instead, and be I just can do wires tricks, and that's it.
Either way.
Aspect of the Worm, 11th level way of the Ascendant Dragon feature. The power of your draconic ki now radiates from you, protecting your allies from harm and punishing any who raise arms against them. As a bonus action, you can create an aura of draconic power that radiates 30 feet from you for 1 minute. Monks are getting auras now? What did paladins?
No.
Paladins are going to be mad about this. Choose acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage, and for the duration, you gain the following effects. You and your allies within your aura gain resistance to the chosen damage type. Waves of destructive energy flow out from you and your allies when any of you are attacked. When you or one of your allies in the aura is hit by an attack made by another creature within the aura, the target that was hit can use their reaction to deal an amount of damage of the chosen type equal to 1 roll of your martial arts die to the attacker.
That's complicated.
Once you use this bonus action, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you expend 4 key points to use it again.
It isn't complicated, but it reads so complicatedly.
It reads so weird. It's if you get hit, you hit back. It does fire damage.
You're resistant.
It's basically what it
It's
does.
worded so confusingly.
But it's your martial arts die. It's just 1 roll of it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's not much.
It's not bad. It makes you, I feel, pretty good at fighting dragons. You get resistance to the dragon's damage type, and you can pick
cool.
a counter damage type if they're a fire dragon, you can pick cold damage or whatever and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Well, but so does it say it has to be the type that you chose though?
Yeah.
Yeah, of the
Doesn't it
chosen
say?
type.
So if you're fighting a fire dragon, you want part of this ability to be fire. You want to choose fire, so your guys are resistant
But it
to
actually
fire.
is
But then-
helpful.
the damage
right,
you all
actually.
deal back doesn't hurt them
That's
anymore.
No,
True.
that is actually correct. This is a bad dragon hunter. You are correct. Because you would
So
you'd be
it's like
resistant,
you can endure a dragon, but you can't really do anything
that's
back.
interesting because most creatures that you fight that are dealing elemental damage will be resistant, if not immune, to that element themselves. So that's going to usually be the case that, like, one half of the ability is going to be significantly more useful to you depending on the situation.
Yeah, you're actually right. That's kind of a weird design space. Because, yeah, if you're fighting fire elementals, so you pick fire,
Yeah.
the fire damage doesn't matter.
Or
it doesn't do anything.
Or if you're fighting something that's weak to fire, so you pick fire, then only that part is useful to you. So
they're not gonna hit you
they're
with
not,
fire
Yeah, so then
damage.
the resistance doesn't matter to you. Yeah, that's weird.
It should kind of just be like pick one or the other. Like, because it's like if you're gonna.
Yeah.
Like.
If having both isn't useful.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of
Weird.
weird. If you're fighting a group of creatures that is made up of both fire and air elementals, now we're talking.
Now we're in
But
business.
I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. We'll think about that one a little bit more. We'll talk about the final ability here. The 17th level feature Ascendant Aspect. Your Draconic key reaches its peak. You gain the following benefits. You gain blind sight out to 30 feet. Within that range, you can effectively see anything that isn't behind total cover, even if you're blinded or in darkness. Moreover, you can see an invisible creature within that range unless the creature successfully hides from you. When you
Wait. So you can see an invisible creature unless you couldn't see the invisible creature.
Yeah. I think it's saying, like, if that creature does a thing that otherwise would
If that
hide
creature
from you.
passes his stealth check to hide from you, then
Right.
you can't see it. Which would have been true anyways, still.
But if they're invisible and not hiding,
Yeah.
if they're not stealthing because they're just invisible.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like no one ever told us the difference between these things, and now we have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
And I think they also kind of have to include it because if an invisible creature was like behind total cover,
You can't see it
previously
anyway.
it said you can't see it, but here it says you can see invisible creatures. So if they didn't include that bit, you'd be like, no, it doesn't. No matter what, I can see them. They're
And it's like
invisible.
they're behind a wall.
No, it says I can see invisible
Yeah.
creatures. It's like, weirdly complicated.
Mm-hmm.
When you
But it is.
when you damage a creature with your Breath of the Dragon, the energy clings to the target. At the start of each of the creature's turns, it takes damage of the type your breath dealt, equal to one roll of your martial arts die. At the end of its turn, the creature can repeat the save, ending the effect on itself on a success. So it's like you breathe fire on them, then they kind of catch on fire, and it keeps hurting
Yeah.
them. Or they catch on
That makes
ice.
sense.
They catch on
Catch on ice.
catch on lightning.
They catch on
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah,
They catch cold.
they catch a cold.
I'm on poison.
Hell, put out the poison. I'm on poison. When you activate your aspect of the worm, Draconic Fury explodes from you. Yikes. Choose any number of creatures you can see within your aura. Those creatures each take 4d10, acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage. Your choice. I was really hoping for an and right there, but
Wait.
sadly it's or.
So does
It's all the
that
damage types at once.
It
What does that
doesn't
even mean?
necessarily say it has to be the same type that you chose for your
Correct.
aspect of the worm?
Correct.
So you could
So it
be
gives that
shielded
ability
from
mildly more.
Yeah, so you could be shielded
functionality.
from cold damage and deal fire damage.
But then,
I think.
it's still, yeah, you could, yes, but the other bit still doesn't
Yeah, then the
work.
other bit's still not helpful.
Okay.
Weird.
So that's the subclass. Overall, when I first read it, I feel like I felt kind of what we're all feeling right now. It starts off pretty strong. And then I feel like I kind of got lost on it a little bit.
Yeah.
I was like, these final abilities aren't really doing it for me.
I think it could just use some tweaks for sure. I think it's a good idea and parts of it are there, but it needs some revision, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love you can fire punch and you can do a sick breath weapon attack. Like, those are sweet. And even the, like, with the wings and all that, like, gaining the flying speed when you're doing your step of the wind is still cool.
Because at that level, too, that's like 50 feet of flying movement.
Yeah.
At level, like, 6 or whatever. That's bonkers.
It's really good. But these last two, I just feel like I don't know. I feel like they both are kind of overly complex, but not for a big enough benefit. Like a lot is going on in these, but the more we look at it, we're like, but that kind of doesn't even work with what I was doing earlier, and that is nice, but also kind of confusing. I'm probably gonna have multiple questions about how that works every session. Like.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's like, and then this ability goes off, but it only does this much damage, so, like, once I'm level 20, I'm gonna stop using these.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know. Mercy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, mixed feelings about it. I feel like the changes that need to be made aren't massive, and I would be happier with it.
Yeah.
I think ironing out that ability so that it doesn't feel like only part of it is ever useful at any given time, changing the flavoring in the text about flying are honestly the two things that stick out the most in my mind that I don't love. I also feel like Ascendant aspect, there's just like a lot going on.
Kind of all packed in
Kind
there.
of more than needs to be going on. Like, just make part of it better and make there be less of it would kind of be my preference, just to streamline it.
I agree. I don't think the blind sight
It doesn't.
I don't feel like it
no.
makes sense. I don't feel like it fits. Like, dragons
Well,
can
so-
sometimes have, like, true sight. But,
But
like,
it seems weird.
Dragons all have blind sight, and do you want to know why all dragons have blind sight?
Why?
Because Smaug sensed that Bilbo was there in that one book a
You're
guy
right.
wrote. And that is why every single dragon has blind sight. No other reason whatsoever.
I don't feel like that. I mean, if you're gonna look at all of the things about dragons in D&D and decide which things are the most important to be represented here, I don't think that's one of
I don't
them.
think blind sight's gonna
Yeah.
really matter for me, Chief. Yeah.
And if they're trying
Well-
to make it a weird, like, mysticism thing about, like, sensing another creature, but even then, that's not how they worded it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'd cut that out.
Yeah.
And then this other part, it just enhances your breath or your breath of the dragon feature. Cool. I don't love like
Once again, a
capstones
thing
that
we've
just
talked about
go back and modify
of-
every ability you had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a capstone that just makes your other abilities as viable as they should have been.
I think if they wanted to do that, I would have preferred that they just write that in with the original ability that, like, at 17th level, it now does this additionally.
And then at 70th level, give you a new.
Give you something new, yeah. I would have
Yeah.
preferred that.
Yeah. I think personally, I would wipe this 17th ability and I would just come up with a brand new one.
Yeah.
I think it needs a brand new capstone that really makes me feel like a dragon at 17th level. But the thing is not a dragon, like a dragon warrior, right? Like a dragon flavored martial arts master.
I keep picturing, like, Zuko doing the dragon dance.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I don't necessarily need to, like, be able to turn into a dragon or something like that, but I don't want to just go back through and mess with all my previous abilities. I want to get some sort of, I don't know, maybe, like, give me a legendary resistance or something, you know? My draconic fortitude. I've mastered the power of dragons and I can shake off an effect once a day or something. I mean, that'd be kind of sick.
Yeah.
Well,
don't
that is
know.
actually something that monks already sort of get.
Yeah, they can, like, end effects on themselves and stuff.
Well,
That's
no,
true.
they gain at a certain point. They gain proficiency in every save type, and can just keep paying key points until they make the save if they want to.
Interesting.
That's like a thing that they get. So they already do sort of pseudo get that ability. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, because the whole point at the beginning, it was like the grandeur and might of the dragons. And it's like, I get, we've gotten the breath of the dragons. We've gotten the wings of a dragon. We haven't really got the grandeur or might yet. You know,
Do we
Scales.
get scales? Do we get
Yeah.
scales?
we got wings.
I feel like aspect of the worm, I don't love that it's an aura, just because I feel like it
Is kind of weird.
stepping on paladins. It's just kind of odd.
Well, and because it's an aura, from the design standpoint, they weakened it. Because
Yeah.
it's like, because it could potentially be helping your whole party. So that's why it only does like 1d8 damage back to the guy. But it also uses
yeah.
their
If it was-
reaction. And it's like, that's not enough for a monk.
If it was just for you,
I feel.
and it was like you could pick one for each of the two halves of the ability, you become resistant to one of these damage types, and you get the lashback of a different one.
Right.
And if it was just for you, I think that'd be kind of sweet.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that would make sense flavor-wise here that doesn't in a lot of dragon-based classes or races, because it's like, you're not descended from one kind of dragon, so you could totally be using techniques
From both at the
studying
same
multiple
time,
kinds
yeah.
of dragons. And I think it could be just for you, and that way you could emulate the sort of idea of dragon scales making you like
Tougher
resistant
and
or
stuff,
tougher, even though you're not literally growing scales, but
Yeah.
the metaphoric idea about it could be cooler. And then maybe
Also, dragons are selfish. Why are you giving your team an aura? What is this weird
that is weird
support
to me. I'm
dragon?
like,
yeah.
since when are dragons support swarm creatures?
Unless your party is your horde,
it's
I suppose.
weird.
You have
Yeah.
collected your party and they are your horde.
I definitely don't think this needs to be a support monk.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Onog, hit me with some of your personal takes on this, your hot
right.
takes here.
I think it starts off very strong and very unique and in a very interesting design space. And I like it very much because it takes certain things, and instead of just giving you raw damage output, it just changes how you can deal damage, which is a very neat way of doing it. But as the abilities kind of manifest onto each other, I think this thing is trying to do too many things.
Yeah.
Like its original 3rd level ability, where you gain it basically advantage on intimidation or persuasion checks. That's probably one of my least favorite abilities in this whole thing, interestingly enough, because monks are already mad. It's MAD. I forget what it stands for, but it's like multiple ability deficit kind of a thing.
Yeah, they're putting
because
points
monks,
into too many abilities already.
Yeah, monks are they want to have as much dexterity and as much wisdom and as much constitution as possible. And now you're adding an ability that requires persuasion and charisma. And it's like, no, this monk already has like a 10 in persuasion at best. You know, unless we're rolling for stats, there's no way any monk I make has higher than a 12 persuasion. So this ability is like dead on arrival, you know, and things like that. And it keeps trying to just load up all these different, I think it kind of speaks to the conversation we were having before about like what is a ranger, and this kind of clashes with us in the very same way of what is a dragon. And they keep putting all these things where they're like, well, this is what dragons do, right? And we go, but you didn't need to do that. You know, we're on the opposite end of the spectrum now of like, no, you put too many dragony things in this.
Yeah. Definitely. Is there any kind of rework that you just spitballing, just brainstorming here? Any kind of reworks you would consider for the kind of higher end abilities? Like I'm saying maybe we scrap this whole 17th level one. Maybe we make the 11th level one just a single target and make it better. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm never a fan of especially a capstone ability that the only thing it does is alter abilities you already had. A capstone should be flashy. It should add something cool. I mean, Way of the Open Hand monks get the only save or die ability in the entire game. And this guy gets, well, you do more lightning damage when you use one of your other abilities sometimes. You know, it's not interesting. It's not engaging. Like, this guy is the Way of the Dragon, and he doesn't even gain an immunity to a damage type. Like, think about that. You know, like, if the final ability was when you fire off this ability, that all of a sudden you gain immunity to like what if it was just you gain immunity to all these damage types and you can deal extra damage and stuff like that. Even that would be more interesting than this.
That'd be kind of sick.
I think it would
like what, or I would even accept like at the start of each day, pick one to be immune to or something like that. Like that'd be like something like that is pretty sweet.
Even something like that. But like this should make you feel like I am the paragon of the study of dragons. I have become what dragons are and or what they fear, because they all are scared of each other, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I have ascended to the level of a dragon, and this just is like, yeah, you do more damage when you use your other dragony abilities sometimes. And then also you can see people who aren't there, unless they're hiding from you, then you can't see them.
Yeah.
I think it would be cool looking for other abilities to take from dragons that would fit more in this sort of a monk. I think it would be interesting to look at attacks that dragons can do and like lair actions that dragons can do, and looking at pulling from there, because that to me feels more like a martial arts technique where I've studied dragons and they have an attack where they can beat their wings, or they have an attack where they can slash or beat their tail, and how can
or like they
I
summon
emulate
fog.
that? Yeah, I think that would be more interesting to me.
I mean, a lot of dragons also have like frightful presence, don't they? Like,
Oh, yeah.
something along
Oh, yeah.
those lines.
Yeah.
Like when you become ascendant, you gain frightful presence. Like that'd be pretty rad.
I think if you're gonna
Like-
say that this is a martial artist who has studied dragons, they should get attacks based off of attacks that dragons can do.
Like, ironically enough, the Way of the Four Elements monk feels more like a dragon ascendant monk than this one does. And that's not a good space you want to be in.
Yeah, I mean, if you flavored all of your 4 element spells as like dragon,
As like, I'm doing a
techniques.
dragon attack. This is my dragon tail water splash, things like that.
Then all of a sudden, it's a more dragony one than this one is. Yeah. Problem, Wizards of the Coast.
Whoops.
I noticed.
I mean,
an
that's the
error.
thing. While I was thinking, even the early level abilities, I was like, you can just reflavor, like, a radiant monk, like I forget what the Sun Soul monk or whatever they're called. You could just reflavor that as you are the power of the divine dragon, and you're just blasting people with radiant fire breath,
Yeah.
or something like that. And like that also just feels more like a dragon.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is kind of the problem. Is maybe the space is a little too cramped right now. There's a couple of other subclasses for monks that if you just do a slight reflavoring can already feel like a dragon monk. So I don't know, maybe this isn't that that useful of a space to explore if we've already got some. Even like, isn't there like shadow monks? I mean, shadow dragons exist. Like you could be a shadow dragon monk.
It's funny though, because we don't look at warlocks and go, but there's already so many ways to feel like a spooky necromancer.
No, but we do say there's already a fiend one.
That's
and you're
true.
making another fiend
There's
one.
already
True.
2 undead
Yeah.
warlock patrons. We have said that.
That's
Yeah.
true. You're right.
And so like
But this one explodes, so it's better.
Yes, the exploding warlock is much better. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there could be a spot for this, and I think that there's some interesting design here, but I feel like at the end it kind of falls apart and needs the most work, the most further time in the oven on how it wraps itself up at the end there. I know you can do it, Wizards. You've done it with the Genie Warlock. You made it better, so I know you can do it.
Do you think he'll ever watch these videos?
Oh, I think Jeremy Crawford watches us every night before bed.
Where's
Like
favorite
personally.
channel?
Yeah, his favorite channel on YouTube. Well, let us know what you think of the Way of the Ascendant Dragon Monk in the comments below, listeners. Do you agree with any of our opinions? Do you have your own opinions on which of these abilities work or don't work for you? How do you feel about the flavor of a Dragon Monk? Do you feel like it's already kind of covered already? Do you feel like there's enough space for this monk to exist if it was added in a future book of some kind? Let us know your thoughts. While you're commenting, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for future Dungeons & Dragons Unearthed Arcana discussion side quests. And that's it. Side quest is completed. We have finished off. We should head back to town.
Yeah, look for Bean.
Yeah, go find Bean at one of these days. We can get a couple more Koroks in before we do that. But that's it for this side quest. Nobody even died.
Bye.
Bye.